Most people think Christmas is all about cozy fires, warm lights, and happy traditions. But if you peel back the layers and look at how some of those traditions actually started, you find something completely different. Hidden underneath the carols and decorations are rituals that were once violent, frightening, or downright bizarre. Today we're looking at 10 forgotten Christmas traditions with origins so dark and so strange that they feel almost unreal. Let's get into it. It sounds like something out of a horror movie, but Christmas used to be the night people feared spirits the most. Long before Christmas was a religious holiday, the winter season was tied to a massive pagan festival known as Yule. During this time, Europeans believed the veil between the living and the dead was at its thinnest, so instead of singing carols, many families stayed indoors, locked their doors, and quietly waited out what they believed was a terrifying event known as the Wild Hunt. The Wild Hunt was a huge supernatural procession led by a god or a ghostly king. People believed the dead and otherworldly creatures raced across the winter sky, searching for souls to drag away. In parts of Germany, Norway, and Denmark, parents told children not to whistle, not to wander outside, and not even to look through the windows. Doing so could supposedly get the attention of the hunters overhead. Some families left food on the doorstep so the spirits would pass by them. Others marked their door with protective symbols. It was not a joyful celebration. It was a night of anxiety. Eventually, Christianity absorbed the season and tried to erase the belief, but in many places, people still told these stories throughout the 18th and 19th centuries. Even Charles Dickens used this old idea when he wrote A Christmas Carol. He wrote a ghost story because for centuries, ghost stories were the most traditional Christmas stories of all. This tradition started with men dressing in disguises that were meant to scare people, not bring gifts. Centuries before Santa was imagined as a jolly man in red pants, parts of Europe celebrated something called mumming. During mumming, groups of men would wander through villages wearing animal skins, straw costumes, or rags soaked in dark red dye that made them look like they were covered in blood. These groups occasionally carried clubs, bones, or blackened masks. Their goal was to frighten bad spirits and also frighten anyone who refused to give them food or drink. In early records from Ireland and Scotland, villagers complained that mummers would bang on doors and cause chaos. They were seen as both festive and threatening. Over time, this tradition blended with the figure of Saint Nicholas, who was originally portrayed wearing robes, not a red suit, but red had already become associated with winter disguises, so the image merged. By the 1800s, Santa was drawn wearing red robes, influenced by both Saint Nicholas and these darker winter characters. One of the first Christmas feasts ever recorded was created out of fear. In medieval Iceland, families believed in a creature called the Yule cat. This massive black cat, the size of a house, was said to roam the countryside on Christmas night. The legend said it would look into homes and determine which family members had worked hard during the winter and which ones had not. If you had not finished your chores, the Yule cat would eat you. This belief was so powerful that wealthy farmers used it as a tool to force workers into producing more wool and winter clothing. In the 1600s and 1700s, written records mention that people were pressured to complete textile work by Christmas or face both real punishment from employers and the fear of supernatural consequences. To protect themselves, families prepared enormous meals and left leftovers near windows and doors. Some people even wore multiple layers of newly finished clothing to show the Yule cat they had worked hard. It was less of a celebration and more of a bribe to stay alive. Today, the tradition is mostly told as a children's story, but its origins were based on a very real fear and very real exploitation. Before Christmas trees were covered in ornaments, they were decorated with something much more disturbing. In early European winter festivals, people decorated trees and homes with bones, antlers, dried animal skins, and even skull fragments. These decorations were not meant to be cute. They were meant to keep dangerous spirits away during the darkest time of year. Archaeologists have found evidence in ancient Germanic sites showing that evergreen trees were placed near homes and covered with offerings of animal parts during midwinter celebrations. Written accounts from the 1500s describe households hanging preserved boar heads, deer antlers, and dried hides above doorways. The idea was that these remains acted like protective totems. They represented past hunts and symbolized survival through harsh winters. When Christianity began adopting the tree tradition, it faced concerns about the gruesome decorations. By the 1600s, many churches discouraged using animal parts, calling the practice pagan. Slowly, ornaments like apples, candles, and nuts replaced them, but the original purpose of the Christmas tree was protection, not decoration. The first carolers were not peaceful singers. They were more like a drunken mob. In medieval England, groups of young men would go out on Christmas Eve performing something called wassailing. While some versions were polite, many communities dreaded it. They would travel from house to house demanding food, beer, or money. If a family refused, the group could become aggressive. Historical diaries from the 1600s and 1700s describe these people shouting insults, throwing objects, and sometimes even breaking into homes. One British magistrate wrote that refusing one was considered a personal attack and that retaliation could be severe. This was eventually transformed into singing carols, but even that did not start peacefully. In the 1800s, many English newspapers published complaints about carolers banging on doors after midnight or refusing to leave until they were paid. The gentle Christmas singing we know today only became popular when formal choirs and churches organized safer versions. Before that, caroling was seen as one of the most chaotic Christmas season activities. Christmas used to involve creatures who punished in terrifying ways. Most people have heard of Krampus, but he is only one of dozens of dark winter figures. In fact, many children from Central Europe grew up believing that Christmas visitors could drag them away if they misbehaved. In Austria and Hungary, a creature called Perchten would roam villages wearing wooden masks and horns, straw cloaks, and animal bells. Some versions of the Perchten were kind, others were violent. They were said to whip lazy or disobedient people. In Iceland, children feared the 13 Yule lads. The modern version is silly and cartoonish, but the original Yule lads were dangerous creatures who snuck into homes to torment families. Early writings described them stealing food, destroying property, and stalking people after dark. These stories were not just told for fun. Adults used them as warnings to force obedience during harsh winters. Christmas was less magical and more like a season of surveillance. One of the earliest Christmas traditions involved publicly burning representations of individuals who angered the community. In parts of England and colonial America, communities celebrated something called mumming plays or Christmas masking. While the plays are remembered as silly performances, early written records from the 1500s and 1600s show a much darker side. During some performances, villagers created effigies of unpopular people. These figures were made from straw, cloth, or old clothing. The effigies were then paraded through the streets and burned as a symbolic punishment. In some cases, the people represented were still alive in the village, and the act was meant as humiliation. This tradition started to fade when authorities realized it encouraged vigilantism and could spark violence. But for a long time, Christmas celebrations were an excuse for settling grudges publicly. Families used to sit around a Christmas fire and perform a ritual that foretold who would die in the coming year. In England, Wales, and parts of Scotland, there was a tradition where a bundle of ash wood was tied with both willow and hazel branches and placed into the Christmas fire. As the wood burned, the ties snapped one at a time. According to folklore, each snap predicted something. In many communities, the first person whose tie broke when they touched it would be the first to die in the coming year. Others believed that the snaps revealed who would marry or who would have bad fortune. The tradition was taken very seriously in rural areas. Written accounts from the 1700s describe families sitting silently as the bundle burned, watching the wood for signs. People would tense up each time a tie popped. The ritual eventually became more lighthearted and turned into a social gathering involving drinks and songs, but its original purpose was a solemn prediction of death performed on one of the supposedly holiest nights of the year. There was a Christmas tradition where people literally hit each other to stay safe. In Ireland, Wales, and parts of England, there was a ritual known as Christmas beating or boxing the devil. On Christmas morning, people would lightly strike friends and family with holly branches. Holly leaves have sharp points, and the idea was that drawing even a tiny amount of blood scared away evil spirits for the winter. Some groups took it further. In parts of Wales, men used bundles of thorny plants and chased each other through villages, believing the pain drove darkness from the body. Newspapers from the 1800s described children returning home with scratches on their legs and arms after participating in the ritual. The practice eventually evolved into Christmas games and harmless pranks, but in its early form, it was a painful, ritualistic cleansing meant to prevent bad luck and sickness. Gift giving started as a way to avoid punishment, not show kindness. In ancient Rome, the festival Saturnalia was held in December. The festival heavily influenced the development of Christmas. During the festival, people gave offerings to powerful individuals to avoid angering them. These offerings included candles, coins, and small statues of gods. They were less like gifts and more like tributes. When early Christians adopted parts of Saturnalia into Christmas traditions, the gifting aspect carried over. For centuries, gifts were often given to employers, landlords, or authority figures, not family, because you know your boss and your landlord, they need more from you. They need more. These gifts were expected and could not be refused. Some documents describe them as a type of tax or protection payment. It was not until the 1800s that gift giving transformed into a family tradition associated with love, especially after writers like Charles Dickens emphasized kindness and charity. Before that, it was rooted in social pressure and fear of punishment. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I hope that you have a very happy holiday season with your families, full of food and laughter and good vibes, and I'm just wishing you all the best this holiday season and for the new year coming up. Alright, 2026, new year, new us, we got this. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski. I'll see you again soon. Bye!